The United States approving a nearly $1 billion arms sale to Ukraine, including long-range missiles. This comes at a critical point in peace negotiations after Moscow launches a massive aerial assault against the country, killing more than 20 and damaging an EU building in the process. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt on the president's response.
He was not happy about this news, but he was also not surprised. Perhaps both sides of this war are not ready to end it themselves. The president wants it to end, but the leaders of these two countries need it to end and want it to end, must want it to end as well.
Retired U.S. Navy captain and former U.S. military diplomat Brent Sadler joins me now. And Brent, we're having a meeting. Steve Witkoff is going to be meeting with individuals here in New York City from Ukraine to try and strategize. But I feel like we're a broken record at this point. We say this over and over again. There's this peace talk. There's this meeting. The problem is, no matter what Putin promises to Trump, it's a lie. It is an out-and-out lie. And Putin ultimately doesn't want to end this war. So what do we do, Brent?
Well, we have to change Putin's thinking, and the way we do that is by changing the dynamic on the battlefield and also his ability to sustain his war machine. And as far as sustaining his war machine, that's really cutting him off or causing his customers that are pumping lots of billions of dollars into his oil industry, like countries like India, who rightfully are looking on the open market for the best deal and where there's oil available. So secondary sanctions, that's being taken and put in place now. China, not only just buying Russian oil, but also supplying key industrial components. You'd have to find a way to actually make that too costly for the Chinese to continue. But until things change on the battlefield, there's not a whole lot of compellence to make Putin change his approach that he thinks he can get more by fighting than through negotiation.
Let's talk more about the sanctions, because Zelensky came out and said, obviously, we need stronger sanctions. What you've done so far is not working. I'll summarize that quote for you. But Putin has been able to withstand the 3.5 years of sanctions thus far. Is there a certain level of sanctions and involving other countries that Russia obviously relies on their money, their buying of Russian oil and the like? Is there a certain level that will wake him up and get him to the table, force his hand on this? Or is he really immune based upon how he has structured his country and his leadership structure?
Well, the short answer is yes to the sanctions. For far too long, there were loopholes, there were exceptions. European countries, because they had made themselves so reliant on Russian oil, they couldn't simply throw the switch. And during the Biden administration, there was a reticence to try to put more American petroleum on the market to allow these countries to get their needed energy from somewhere else other than Russia. This is why India is the second largest by a wide margin to any European country in buying Russian oil since 2022. Their trade went up fivefold after the February 22 invasion. But as far as China, those sanctions, those tariffs have been put on pause, so yet they're still not biting like they need to. But again, the most important point I want to make on this, the sanctions alone at this stage, after 4 years of fighting, the Russian war economy has been able to adjust in many ways. So it's going to take also pressure on the battlefield, as well as closing these longstanding gaps in the sanctions regime.
Yeah, understood. If I'm the American viewer watching this at home, I'm thinking, we've had this discussion. We could have re-racked an interview that you and I did 6 months ago, a year ago. It's just like we're going around in circles. We want an end to it. And I think at this point, we just need to do whatever it takes to end this or force Putin's hand. And your suggestions are warranted. Meantime, France, Germany, and the UK reimposing, I should say, United Nations snapback sanctions on Iran over its nuclear program. Quick definition of a snapback sanction. This would reimpose the UN sanctions that were in place on Iran prior to 2015. Will this have any meaningful impact, Brent?
It definitely slowed down that regime's ability to export terror and sow discourse through all of its proxies. But thanks to Israel's very successful campaign against Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and Iran itself, that regime is on its back foot. So it's no surprise that the sanctions are going to go right back to where they were when Trump stepped back out of the JCPOA. And when the European nations were threatening to go back to doing business as usual, it's good to see that we're putting all the pressure back in place. But again, that military hammer is also required from time to time, such as the strikes that President Trump launched in order to set back that nuclear regime and to make clear to Iran there's going to be a cost if they try to use their limited resources, even under a sanction regime, to go back and reconstitute their nuclear enterprise.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think in all these stories, we need the sanctions, yes, but we also need that military might, that hammer, that threat of a hammer, or in the Iran case, the hammer itself. Brent Sadler, thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.